Within this rollout, people communicate with various methods, whether it be verbal or non-verbal. These sets of communications are grouped together to form a language. Languages by many people's status are always thought to be man-made. Yet there's one single language that even scholars are debating whether we made it or it made us. That universal language is none other than mathematics itself. Welcome to the Bonraiwa podcast. I am Beam, your host for this episode, and in this video, we are greeted by three hosts, Tintin and Jamie, together with today's special guest. Hi. So, given an example, if we were to talk about pi by its name is one of the numbers that we've known since we were young. Yet we did not really give it much thought about where it started and it come from. Unlike today, mathematicians had no exact context to study or nor to guide with, which is confusing. It begs the question, what exactly do ancient people think? How could they even come up with such concept? Well, fair enough, because we will have a podcast ready to spill that bean.
Okay, wait. Before we get into pi, right? Yeah. Before we get into the origin of pi, how about we talk about all numbers in general, starting from the very basics of humanity.
Yeah, sure thing, take it away.
Okay, all right. So imagine you're like a caveman, like millions of years ago. What would you possibly use numbers for? Well, counting, right? Like there is an apple or there are two rocks or something like that. And since we have 5 fingers on both hands to count, we naturally count to 10 or any number that is a multiple of 5, like 60 or something like that.
Yeah, so we had natural numbers?
Yes, we first had what's called counting numbers. In fact, people put tally marks on bones and rocks even before alphabets were even invented. Then later on, people started to deal with a broader use of numbers. They use them for weights and measures, which requires comparing two values, which is the use of ratio. And so because of this, rational numbers come after, ratio, rational, right? But still, that wasn't enough for civilizations to build their shelters or, a huge tombstone for their leaders, I guess. So they found out that sometimes numbers can't be expressed as a perfect ratio. Actually, they were in denial for a very long time and could only make rough approximations. As we all know, in a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides, known as a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's the Pythagorean theorem discovered by Pythagoras, Greek philosopher. With this fact, he discovered the square root of 2, but he still couldn't stand its irrationality. Irrational numbers stayed irrational until way later.
But what about negative numbers or zero? Are you telling me that they came after irrational numbers?
Well, not really. If we look into the historical and cultural factors, we can see that Greeks and Romans Empire prioritized using math in a more concrete way, like in architecture. So the numbers that were used will be, concrete and visible.
Okay,
and that just describes positive numbers. Although Diophantus, another Greek philosopher, had come up with negative numbers before, they all just think it's some absurd idea. However, in other civilizations, take Indian for example, they accepted the use of negative numbers in calculating debts and losses. And since you guys are Buddhists, right?
Yeah.
You probably heard about nirvana, which in a nutshell is basically a state of nothingness. So that's why zero is also became tolerable for Indians too.
So can I talk about pi now?
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you, right? Go ahead.
Don't worry about it. So pi is a constant term which refers to the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, approximately equal to 3.14. Nevertheless, what you just listened to previously is not how it originates. For thousands of years, many mathematicians were calculating pi in a numerically inefficient way. They started by drawing a hexagon inside a circle and drew a square around the same circle. By comparing the ratio between both shapes' perimeters and the diameter of a circle, they only know that a pi is somewhere between 3 and 4. They then bisect the polygon into finer and finer shapes to get a better approximation. This was actually a famous method for around a millennium, Rudolf van Zelen, a Dutch mathematician, even spent 25 years calculating
5 years. That's half of his life, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, he spent 25 years calculating it, and he got like 400 sides.
Quintillion size. That's like more than a number of grain of sand in this world, right?
Probably. And you know what? He just only got like 35 correct decimal places.
What again?
35.
35
places.
after all that effort.
25 years.
Oh my
That's
god.
a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But then in like 16th centuries, Sir Isaac Newton's famous for his revolutionized breakthroughs.
Oh, the Apple guy.
Yeah, the gravity guy. I love
Steve
it.
Jobs? No, Steve Jobs. Okay.
So he just invented a calculus. So he can just integrate the area of the curve under the circle. And Newton introduced this idea through binomial theorem and used it as a tool to express pi as an infinite series to just calculate.
So we heard something interesting there, didn't we? Did Newton invent calculus? Well, he actually did, but along with Gottfried Leibniz. But say when you think about infinity, when exactly did the concept come from or originate?
A few years ago.
Or maybe a few years ago.
Well, maybe a few years before Newton,
Well,
like the 15th century.
So a few years ago, Well, not quite close, but I give you the credit. So it's actually way back in the 400 BC.
What?
Surprise.
400?
Yeah, 400. Well, before we go through that, you guys have to know what calculus is first. So in a nutshell, calculus is basically a branch of mathematics concerned with infinity, or the changing rate within an infinitely small period or sum of an infinitely small area. Are you guys still with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still with you.
The infinitesimal, something like that.
Yeah, something kind of like that. So infinity has always existed as a philosophical concept, but it's just that, a concept to many people. But during the time of ancient Greece, Archimedes, known for his, Eureka cups.
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
You know him? You know him?
naked one?
Yeah. The naked man. Yeah. So he think of a way to calculate the area of a circle by, cutting them into pizza slices and rearranging them so you get, like a shape that fairly looks like a rectangle. The short side would, be the rectangle radius. The short side would be the short side of the rectangle would be the radius, while the long side would be half of the circumference. Okay.
So pi r.
Yeah, pi r square, something kind of like that. Okay. There's also this paradoxical question called dichotomy paradox, about walking to the other side of the room. So but you can only walk to the half of the room left remaining. So how will you reach the other side of the room since, the distance of the room can be infinitely divided, right? Yeah.
I can't get to the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Exactly. Although this question start off as, quite mind-bending puzzle, this is actually a perfect representation of what limit of an infinity is. Okay.
Like an infinite sum.
Yeah, like an infinite sum, kind of like that. Another example would be like a half, a fourth, or an eighth of something, so
Like
on and
a
on and
half
on.
plus a fourth plus an eighth and so on.
And so on, exactly.
That's the same thing as the previous paradoxical question, right?
Yes, it's the same thing. So when you add all of that fraction together, the result would be equal exactly to 1. So that's basically the concept of it. So this, theories gradually shape over time until it's, landed in our mathematics textbooks, and that's pretty much it. Isn't that right, Bim?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Ike. As you can see, all of these mathematicians that we mentioned in this episode have gone through numerous and sophisticated thought processes just to come up with theoretical breakthroughs and concepts that we have studied for a long portion of our lives. Comparing those calculations and mental power to pioneer these theories with our math classes, it is apparent that we high schoolers are studying a extremely simplified and easy version of those theories, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Pretty much it. So indeed, we feel that mathematics we all go through in our life is really underappreciated. Like it's actually very easier than what we initially thought, right?
The concepts that we study and to the exam for sure were difficult, but looking back at how much more it could have been, studying math became bearable all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Those mathematical ideas have been all absurd during the time that they were initially presented.
Bro, don't force yourself. Yeah, well, despite those ideas being rejected at that time, like, negative numbers, zero, or even imaginary numbers, those ideas are later proven to be useful and significant.
Useful?
It is.
It is.
Look at
Trust me.
the iPad right here. It's literally made out of math. Well, anyway, where am I again?
Okay.
These ideas are later proven to be useful and significant to the fundamentals of our world. So when we grow up, there will always be a new concept or founding that's hard to comprehend. But that's the beauty of math, right? Try to keep an open mind, and something that gives you a mental decline might become sublime. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
rhymes, right? That rhymes.
I mean,
Okay, so we're currently at the end of this episode. Thank you everyone for watching. Do not forget to share, like, and subscribe for more fun and educational content like this.
Fun, Matt.
It is fun. For some people. Well, this has been Bonraiwa Podcast. See you guys next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.